Hi, I'm Nick Powell, City Hall Bureau Chief with City and State. Joining me on today's City and State TV is Michelle DePass, the Dean of the Milano School for International Affairs, Management, and Urban Policy at the New School. Thank you for joining us today, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about urban environmental policy. We're coming off of the Bloomberg years, which were a very good, it was a very good era for environmental policy. He really pushed a lot of climate change initiatives, public health initiatives. How would you evaluate Mayor Bloomberg's environmental policy as a whole now that he's out of office?
You know, I actually would evaluate it fairly well. When I was here in New York City before I went to the administration, I was active and involved with NGOs that were on the ground that were working on what then became Plan NYC. So I actually saw an opening to be able to bring a lot of ideas to the table, and I think the package he put together really helped stimulate even more national and global leadership. So there was an opportunity here with the kind of interface that Mayor Bloomberg had to be able to put big urban environments on the map. I think he really made it stay home too, in planting trees and developing opportunities for green roofs and really paying attention to when these issues had an opportunity to be integrated with infrastructure. So I actually rate him fairly highly when it comes to environmental thinking and environmental planning. And most importantly, he hired some really good people to come in and be the focal point to doing so and to take leadership.
Now, our current Mayor de Blasio has not put forth a really comprehensive environmental plan quite yet, though he has named some of his commissioners in that area. But how would you say that his message of bridging the inequality gap in the city kind of speaks to the environmental side of the equation, environmental justice, so to speak?
Yeah, I'm encouraged. And I am getting some word on the street from some of the grassroots groups that they're encouraged as well. So when you think about equity, and I'm also a civil rights attorney, so you have to think about, issues of historic equity and how it comes to play. So you have to look at this and say that Mayor de Blasio actually has a historic wrongs that he really, I think, with his platform of equity, is going to try and right. So that's not going to happen overnight. He's been in a couple of months. He has yet to really articulate his full environmental vision, but in looking at some of the appointees that he's named and people that he's actually brought in to be close advisors, I think that he's probably getting a lot of very good advice and information, and we're all really hoping and thinking that pretty soon he's going to come out with an integrated plan. He hasn't really spoken to it, so we do have to make sure and keep the pressure on that it becomes one of his signature priorities.
Were there areas where maybe Mayor Bloomberg didn't focus as much on the environmental side that de Blasio could perhaps fill in those gaps? I'm thinking specifically towards like composting and bringing those sorts of programs into schools and things of that nature. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, there are some things that Mayor Bloomberg have begun, but needed to actually be implemented, and I think that those are some of the things that Mayor de Blasio will be able to put a signature on. So for instance, as you said, some of the recycling laws. Recycling is going to change in New York City, but the devil is in the details. These implementation of new legislation takes a year to 2 years, can take 3 years. So we're really not going to see the promise for a couple of years. But I do see an area where we really didn't have much attention paid to in the Bloomberg years was in the issues of environmental justice. And there was a betterment for all of New York City, but in terms of the communities that needed the most help, the communities that are always very vulnerable, we really didn't see that. So this is where Mayor de Blasio could have an impact.
Now, I want to just shift gears slightly. You used to work for the EPA, as I understand. So, and I take it you were involved in some of the recovery efforts for Hurricane Katrina. Now, the Sandy obviously is 18 months in our rearview mirror. The recovery effort has been somewhat slow. Could you speak to just some of the logistical challenges with a recovery effort this big, more broadly speaking, cutting through red tape, coordinating between federal, state, and local governments? How much of a challenge is that? And maybe kind of explain some of the delays that some of the Sandy affected residents have been dealing with.
Yeah, first of all, I have to say that in any disaster such as that, I mean, the first thing you have to think about are the people that have been impacted. So usually in some disaster, there has been a loss of life. There's very raw and impacted emotions that are occurring. And so you really have to look at it holistically. I mean, I was at the Environmental Protection Agency during, for instance, the BP oil spill. And there was a loss of life, and you have to very much focus on that. But simultaneously, you also have to think about how you're going to correct the issues that are at hand during the day. So with Sandy right now, there is an issue in terms of getting the money out. There's an issue in terms of setting up the infrastructure. There's an issue in terms of what's going to happen with the private sector versus the public sector oversight. The actual issues are enormous. But you also have a huge community that's still suffering. So you have to look at how you're going to address the issues of the community suffering, and you have to look at what are we going to do to make changes on the ground. One of the words of advice that I would give Mayor de Blasio, if I had the opportunity to give him some advice, is to really quickly staff up and be able to bring in a team that can look at what you do post-disaster. There are lots of examples about that across the country. I mean, you mentioned Katrina. I was there at the agency during the BP oil spill. It's been happening, in terms of hurricanes, natural disasters. Because of climate change, these are happening over and over and over again. So I would recommend that he brings in a team of people that knows how to create what needs to be created, because there's no agency that actually has the people that are necessary to be able to deal with that immediate impact like a Hurricane Sandy can bring.
Now, again, shifting gears a little bit, you at the Milano School are really focused on kind of building the kind of the next generation of leaders, right? That's kind of the broad vision. So what sort of programs are in place to kind of, I guess, develop and mold, our next Mayor de Blasio's, our next Bloomberg's, our next Governor Cuomo's? I mean, how are you kind of helping to set them on the right course for leadership?
Yeah, so here at Milano, I mean, we first of all are fortunate because we have alumni that are all throughout the new de Blasio administration and the city council. The head of the city council's chief of staff is an alumni of Milano. So we have deep connections. And I just said that to prove that this is what's already happening. So we have programs here in urban policy, environment sustainability. We have nonprofit management, organizational change management, and international affairs. So just looking at the domestic side, we are a school that concentrates in bringing theory to action. So every student that comes in here will learn theory. They'll be completely immersed in pedagogical approaches, but they also have to spend a lot of time in what we call labs. We have a finance lab, we have an urban policy lab, we have practicums. So you are actually tested. You do a deep dive with an organization, an NGO, a branch of government. You actually spend an entire semester working with them on an issue of the day. And you have to present whatever will be the solutions to the community that you're going to, to the NGO that you're actually working with or the agency that you're working with. So you're tested from the moment you actually start here at Milano, from day one of your registration, in actually communicating and working with nonprofits or agencies. And I think that's very important as we have new administrations. There's a lot of change happening. I mean, I was part of an administration where change was the mantra. And there are some similarities in my mind to President Obama and Bill de Blasio. I mean, coming in after a longer term administration that was before, that had done a lot of work, and to be able to move their agenda, and you just throw in a new team that's coming in that has to completely flip the script, shall we say. So I have all the faith that Mayor de Blasio will do so, but he needs leadership that actually knows how to get things done. So that's what we're trying to build here in Milano, trying to give people the theory and also the opportunity to practice.
Now, before we finish up, I wanted to ask you about an event you have coming up, I understand, focusing on youth and police community relations, and which I understand will be attended by a member of the de Blasio administration. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah,
so the member is Gladys, who is the commissioner for ACS, and it's going to be on Wednesday, April 30th from 8:30 to 10:30. It's hosted by the Center for New York City Affairs, which is a part of the Milano School. We're really engaging around, Mayor de Blasio. One of the things that got him to where he is the end of the stop and frisk policy. And, that's an incredible issue to actually make a political one, which he did, and now is the hard implementation phase. So we're bringing people from the heads of the police department and children's services to really talk about what is it going to look like in neighborhoods when you have youth and you have justice issues and you have the New York City neighborhoods. How are you going to actually turn that around in terms of how we think about community and police interacting? So it should be a really exciting event. And we usually have a really good attendance, so we invite anybody to come on down to the New School.
Great. Michelle DePass, thank you for joining us today.
Sure, thank you. Thank you.